That's one of the problems. It's been a challenge. We've had a geomorphologist, hydrogeomorphologist out to study it. He's identified some areas. Jack's actually going to talk about that some if we get to that point here in the near future. Can I let Dave finish what he was talking about on the wastewater?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think we covered everything that we were going to talk about. Oh, you want the collection system? Yeah, we kind of jumped off of that. So, one of the things we do in this planning is try to find the most cost-effective means to achieve the goal of, and the goal here was centralized sewage treatment. So we looked at 3 different ways of collecting sewage, and one is like gravity sewers. That's a pretty traditional way where you have like 4-inch laterals serving each house, and they go out to like 8-inch lines that go, from manhole to manhole, and the lines get deeper and deeper as they flow downhill, and ultimately then you reach a point where you don't want to dig any deeper, so you put in a pump station and you lift the sewage up and transport it to another area where you either have it flow again by gravity somewhere, or in this case, go to a treatment plant. So we looked at the gravity system and we compared it to a couple different pressure systems. And pressure systems are like the reverse of a water distribution system. It's where each home will pump the sewage into a smaller diameter pipes, and those pipes collect the sewage and then combine it into larger pipes to eventually arrive at the treatment plant under pressure. And there's 2 different ways of doing a pressurized system. One way that's been done in the past is what's called septic tank effluent pumps. And that's where if you have septic tanks that are suitable, that are not leaking and a good, correct size, you can put pumps in the septic tank, or you can add a pump system after the septic tank, and you're pumping that septic effluent to the treatment facilities or to a centralized disposal area. And we looked at that system mainly because we were hoping that the state would allow us to have a subsurface disposal area for septic tank effluent and not have to have a real treatment system. But because of their current regulations and our water quality objectives, they want the nitrogen removed from the wastewater, and they want the organic matter to be removed from the wastewater before any type of disposal. So the one advantage of that system then kind of disappears. So the other system we looked at is and so the other system is a grinder pump system where we're...
Before you leave the step, so the step will not finance, the state will not finance a step system. So it's off the table.
we had another project where the state basically said, look, we just don't want to consider it, because another disadvantage of the SEP system is that you have these septic tanks in every property. And so you have a potential, so the state's concern is you have a potential of that septic tank leaking into the groundwater, and then the whole point of the project is kind of lost. Another disadvantage of the STEP system is you still have a septic tank, and it's still collecting solids, still has to be pumped out at regular intervals. And when you have a community system that's, then the, every 3 to 5 year pumping cycle is strictly maintained, so that's a pretty costly endeavor to pump out that many septic tanks every 3 to 5 years. So the system we ended up finding the most cost effective is a grinder pump system, where we simply pump the raw sewage completely with no solids removal at the household, and we pump it all to the treatment plant as raw sewage and treat it all at the treatment plant. That eliminates the need for a septic tank at all.
So did you look at the like a vermifiltration system?
We encountered that technology with another client of ours, and we looked into that. That system is a system that's more geared towards home scale and small commercial scale, and it wouldn't produce the water quality objectives that the state has, even if we applied it in a large scale like this. So I'm not sure if you're thinking on a household level, using that type of system, or on a community level.
On a community level.
Yeah. We're not aware of any systems that are that large, and
I have forwarded some information to board that
Right.
I believe they've forwarded to you.
yes, I saw that.
Okay, and I would hope that you'd be able to investigate that a little further, because those systems are being used in large community situations, and it would eliminate the need for any kind of removal of solids. I mean, could you explain to the people a little bit how those systems work?
So the system she's referring to is a system that uses a tank that has peat or other type of organic material that serves as a sieve and a bioattachment site for organisms to reduce the organic matter, including worms that could then reduce those solids even further.
Consume the solids.
Yeah. Those systems, there's lots of different systems like that for, like I said before, a household and small commercial scale that are scattered all over the United States. I'm not aware of one in the United States that's using that particular system in that large, but I will look into it a little bit more, sure.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
Mark.
hesitate to ask this, but what about clogs in the system? If they develop either on in private property side or in the pipe itself? How does that develop?
So every sewage system, just as you're all aware, like your houses, the plumbing systems, eventually it clogs. You gotta plunge your toilets and everything. So in a system like this grinder pump system, you still have that possibility of occurring before you get to the grinder pump system. But one of the advantages of a grinder pump system is it actually grinds the sewage up and to a degree that you don't get that type of clogging in it. So once it's pushed into the pressure system, it's not going to clog.
Into the pipe,
Yeah.
And does it function if the electricity's out?
No, grinder pumps need electricity to run, so they would not. Now, the tanks can continue to store wastewater during the power outage. We did a project in Lake County recently where we're going to be putting in 400-gallon tanks. So that'd be about 2 days worth of storage in case of there be extended power outage. Yes, sir.
Well, this is a mechanical device that's going to need electricity to run it.
Right.
So one issue is going to be that's not going to be part of the $60, $70 a month. The homeowner will assume the cost of a pump, which I assume might be another $20. And then if it breaks, does the tech from the sewer plant come and dig it out of your?
So the arrangement that we would recommend, and what we've done with other projects, is that the district would own and operate those pump stations. And stop me if I'm speaking out of line, Val, for what you guys are assuming, but normally that's what would be done. And as far as the electricity that's being used, it's not feasible to meter that electricity and have the district pay for it. So it would be the homeowner's electricity, but it's a very, very small amount of electricity. It'd be less than what a refrigerator takes. Because these pumps only run a few minutes at a time, 20 times a day.
Well, so you have much current. It costs a lot of money.
So there's usually a 30 amp circuit. Yeah.
With substandard septic systems, a lot of the houses would have substandard electrical systems. They would have to upgrade to a electrical system that's to code today. That could be an issue with a fair amount of people.
I don't believe that there would be a requirement for the electrical system to be evaluated just to be able to have this grinder pump added to the home.
Just wondering
Did
if
you say 30 amps? Because a lot of these panels are only 30 amps to start with. So,
But normally you have 20 amp, 30 amp, 40 amp breakers in that panel.
sure. But a lot of those panels are just ancient. So
Yeah.
homeowner would be on the hook for that.
Yeah, there might be a problem, just, like if they were adding an air conditioner to their house, they might have the same issue, yes.
But they may not be planning to add an air conditioner. Now they're mandated
Right.
to add another 20 amp circuit that they may not have. And they have an old Zinsco panel, and now all of a sudden, they've got to add a whole new breaker panel. It's not gonna be perfect.
Yeah. I would hope that that'd be a very rare instance, that, I would hope most houses have the capability of adding one more 30 amp circuit.
We are economically depressed here.
Yes?
I had a question going back to the wastewater solids disposal. And you had indicated that it would require trucking out of the plant several times. In the letter that you sent out, you indicate that that would be approximately 40 truck trips per year, which I would think would be 3 or more per month, going through town. And an 8,000 gallon truck. And so can you tell me what size is an 8,000 gallon truck? Is that like a semi or a small?
Wasn't 3,000 max?
And then the other thing, the question that I had was, then thinking about those trucks going through town on a regular basis, I wondered if there was any proposal or alternative looked at, say, south of 253, where it's more open land and it's closer to either 253 or 128. So those are my questions around the solid disposal.
Okay. So as far as how big is an 8,000 gallon truck, I'm not sure of it. I'm not real versed on truck terms. I think a tandem axle would definitely handle that size tank.
That would be a semi with two trailers?
No, it's not that big, no.
8,000 gallons?
Yeah, it is.
3,000 is.
Milk trucks.
Okay.
What's the answer, Larry?
It'd be 64.
10-wheeler, I mean, the doors, they can handle a water truck, it's used in logging and what have you, it's 3,800 gallons. So if you
Yeah,
double that would be a trailer also.
Yeah, I need to check to see if that might have been a typo. It should have been a 3,000 gallon, because that's the normal size hauling, septic hauler size. So I'll have to look into that and see.
So was there an alternative to that area where it's proposed now by the high school? Was there any, did we look at any other sites, say, south of town, where it's more open land?
I think when we did that, we found that it was well south of our service area. So, when we were looking at the gravity sewer alternatives, it was definitely the wrong way because, as you know, the community slopes down this way.
No, this
Oh, okay, turn around.
way.
It goes down this way.
Yeah.
I have a
So you're
short
still talking
question.
about pumps.
Are there any talks about moving your access road off of Mountain View Road so that it does not butt up to my fence line?
Let's go back to the area map. I'm afraid I'm not sure where your property is. Oh, okay. We're looking at going right past your fence. Yeah. Yes.
Is there any thought about not having this butt up against my property and moving it down?
That's quite possible. It would lengthen the road with the way we have it configured.
Would you like to live next to that road? Probably not.
Well, the road would have pretty small usage.
40 trips, 8,000 tons of stuff per year. Well, that's a lot of trips.
Okay.
Pardon me?
You must not live in your town. I think there's a lot of facilities that have anybody.
You don't live in Boonville.
Roughly once a week.
Is there any more questions about the collection system alternatives that we looked at?
What were they?
Going to go over them again? Yes,
Why
sir.
did you not find a vacuum collection system?
Yeah, so the vacuum collection systems were all in vogue about 25 years ago, and they were always considered alternatives, and some were put in. They are prone to malfunction. They just simply are not. And they're usually used when you have systems where you need shallow lines, but that's not the case here. Usually those systems are put around like lake communities and things like that. But I wouldn't consider engineering one of those, they're just not very reliable.
Did you guys do a cost assessment of that at all?
No, we did not. We didn't look at vacuum systems, no, we didn't cost those out. They would not be cost effective, I can tell you that.
Is there a way to have gravity systems to interim tanks that then are pumped up, so maybe there's a couple of tanks that then are pumped instead of hundreds of little pumps?
Oh, like clustering the grinder pump alternative?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the difficulties then is, what we find is that you have right-of-way issues associated with that, because the pump has to go on some property. You can't put them all out in the public right-of-way, there just isn't room. So then, and these systems are manufactured by several manufacturers, and they're all designed to be the size for one household. So that's a modular type of system that works out pretty well. But when you start combining them together, then you end up having problems with, the multiple users being on one tank, and then the responsibility and,
Well, I'm talking about the responsibility being on the system administrator.
Right.
And the electricity for that pump that serves 50 houses or whatever, to be on the electricity in the system.
Right. So basically, at that point, you're getting into the gravity system alternative that we did look at, where we had the 150 homes all drained down to near the intersection of the highway and Mountain View Road, where we would have one big pump station, municipal pump station. And we looked at a potential site for that, and we did consider that.
What's the percentage of failure on a system like that you just talked about, this flat system? Is there a history of any kind of failures on these?
These grinder pump systems?
Yes.
Well, the one system that we've been specifying is pretty reliable. And if there is a failure, like I said, they're modular systems, and the system operator can come in and swap out a pump within a few minutes.
And you don't have any numbers on how many of these have failed and how many have succeeded over the years?
I could get you that information from the manufacturers, but it's very, very small. I've had experience with these systems for 25 years, and I've never had one that's malfunctioned.
So if it does, though, the cost would then go to a fine from the state? If it got into the soil or anything like that, there was a leak or a problem with it, that cost then has to be, who does the repairs on that? That would be the
district would come in and replace that pump.
Right.
And if you had an overflow from one of these grinder pump stations, the district would come in and try to do a cleanup, but it wouldn't be that big of a disaster from the flow from one household.
And there are alarms, right, Dave? So
Yeah, there would be alarms and telemetry, and they would know before the system had a chance to overflow. Normally, these systems are designed so that you have an alarm system that as soon as the pump on level is exceeded and the pump's not running and lowering the level, it notifies the system operator. And they would come in and switch the pump out before it filled up the tank.
As long as it's part-time.
Well, they would be on call too, and
And it has to be certified by the state and all that too?
what would have to be certified by the state?
The operator.
Oh, the operator? No, they're certified by the state, yes.
We need to move on.
Okay.
So the purpose or benefits of a public water supply system is first, it's going to be safe and reliable. It's going to be a system that's robust enough that you should always be able to turn on your tap and there's going to be water there. Your pump's not going to go out. There's going to be plenty of excess storage, etc. So that if there is a problem within the system, you as a consumer would never know about it. The second thing is that it would allow for public system, water system consolidations. I know Justin touched on this briefly, and you are correct. There were some comments about, well, that's their problem. That's true, but there are at present 4 or 5 public water systems that are regulated by the state in your community, and and another 8 or more that are pending regulation or just recently under regulation that consist of businesses, whether they be restaurants, your health center, et cetera, that also are subject to state regulation. And that includes having to have somebody contracted as a certified operator to sign off on paperwork, to submitting reports on water quality on an annual basis, et cetera. And those folks present are bearing those expenses, and if there was a public water system that they were connected to, that would be shared by all parties. And the third major item that we heard when we first come up here to the community and started talking about this, is certainly the desire to have a greater level of fire protection within the community. At present, if we did have a wildfire come down into the community, they'd be hard pressed to do anything about it. And frankly, I'll admit, in some circumstances, even if there was a modern water system available, that's not always the line that's going to stop it either. We've recently experienced that ourselves in a lower part of, or upper part of Sonoma County. Thank you. Going through a quick water system overview, that being first the discussion of the water source. There are questions on the board. Now we'll talk to water treatment requirements, and then lastly, water storage. As most people here are probably aware, the water derived from groundwater wells within this community is both somewhat scarce. I mean, most wells in the area produce probably on average more down around the 5 to 10 gallon a minute range. As a result of the aquifer system being shallow, a lot of your wells are drawing from probably the upper 100 feet at most of the underlying soils here. And in some places, and it really is variable, the water quality can range from good to having quite a substantial mineral content, typically iron or manganese. As a result, what we looked at for water supply for the community, we've taken, first and foremost, we had a hydrogeologist, sub-consultant, take a look at the valley in a holistic approach, reviewed literally more than 100 well completion logs for the general area so that we could get a better idea of where potentially the better producing wells occur within the valley. We also looked at the records of those public water systems that do exist, that their facilities, records are open to us in both water quality and how much water their facilities produce, and determined that we would need to design a system that would involve a lot more wells than I initially thought would be necessary when I first thought about taking on this project. So we have, in summary, we have identified 3 main areas to potentially cluster or take water from a cluster of wells, bring it to a common location, provide whatever treatment is appropriate for those particular groups of wells, and then discharge it into a distribution system that will be connected to gravity storage tanks that would be located sufficiently in elevation above your community such that if there was a power outage or any activity, that water flows by gravity back down to each of your houses, to the fire hydrants, etc. And provides appropriate pressures. The locations that we identified for potential acquisition and/or development of new wells includes an area on the west side of the Lambert Road area. There is another grouping.
Could you explain that a little further, please?
That would be, what we looked at is near the very end of Lambert Lane. There's properties, and on the west-hand side, there's...
First bridge or second bridge?
We're not going across the second bridge in any of these projects.
That's Walker's property?
No, it is not. We're looking at properties, they're very nearby, adjacent there too.
Which are?
I'm not gonna start throwing names out for you,
Why not?
because why do you need to know them? I'm telling you the general area. I don't know whether or not you're gonna go hassle somebody about it, so that's the only reason I don't mention people's names.
Not the plan.
So, out at the end of Lambert Lane, we have an area. We have also shown a potential well field that would be developed on the creek side or river side of the wastewater facilities with sufficient setback to meet all regulations from the
Would that be
treatment
too
plan.
close to the treatment plant?
Now, as I just said, it would have to be sufficiently far enough from those facilities to meet state regulations, which is greater than 100 feet. And then in the vicinity, or excuse me, on the property, the current well field is located for Meadow Estates. There, we would potentially in that area be using one or more of their existing wells, developing some existing wells in that area, and also to the west, potentially looking at taking over the well that serves the health center and development of one or more wells, maybe vicinity perhaps, where the little community park is on the school property and nearby. Yes, ma'am?
What volume of water are you talking about on a daily basis? And what is this going to do to the water table?
The state requires that we develop enough capacity to provide for what we calculate or estimate as the maximum day demand for the number of customers that are connected, assuming that your largest single producing well is out of service. You always have to plan for one of them being out. For the largest service area, which covers all the proposed sewer service area, plus Meadow Estates, plus continuing down 80 Way to the elementary school, we're talking about having to have available for that maximum day, once a year, about 110 gallons per minute. The average is much, much lower than that. We're talking more in the order of 30,000 gallons a day, or 25 gallons per minute average across a day from all the wells that would be developed in total.
And so what's that total figure roughly come to then? Per day being extracted from
I just indicated on an average day, we're talking about on the order of about 30,000 gallons per day. On a maximum day, we're looking for source supply nearing 150,000 gallons per day to be pumped that single day.
And the water table?
And the water table, if it seems to me, and I won't be answering the question officially, our sub-consultant, hydrologist will, that looks at the basin in a whole, but it seems to me that unless there is significant additional water use occurring as a result of the water system being here, that the water table should not be impacted.
It will be.
If there is additional use, there will be some impact. It all depends upon whether or not there is additional use as a result of a public water service being available. Typically, Water use goes down, people have to start paying for it. People think about conservation.
The people who are not connected depend on their wells.
Yes. Correct, and then they must not be using.
Is it not common sense?
No,
That much-
then isn't it true that then they're not using it part of the public system, and so the public system doesn't have to pump as much? I don't think we're inventing additional usage here by putting in the public water system. Yes, ma'am?
I'm wondering if you can give us a basis of comparison for what's presently being pumped on private systems in the area.
Are they being monitored?
None of your wells are being monitored. It shouldn't be, what we estimate the needs is based upon what we see, housing typical of the nature in the community, utilize in other communities where there is a system and we have data to estimate from. We can't say with certainty what's happening in the community. We just make our best shot.
I want to give you the layman's answer here because I get confused about this too. I have the same questions. But the way I understand it, again, not an engineer, and again, we'll have an actual groundwater specialist respond to this specific question. But the way I understand it is, you guys are all currently on the same aquifer. And it's basically like a big sponge. I mean, it's a sandy sponge or a rocky sponge, but there's water in that sponge, and everybody has a well that's like a straw in it. So those are distributed around the community. So what this project would do is take a few of the larger, better producing wells that we know of that have been pumped, that show that they are capable of collectively getting to this demand level, and rather than them being distributed across the whole area, they'd be focused in a few smaller areas. Now the difference is that these will be for domestic use, and you'll still have your existing wells, your existing wells for irrigation. So really the only change of the aquifer is where the water is coming out of the hole. And it's not even your entire usage, it's just the stuff that you use to take a shower or to fill up your drinking glass or to wash the dishes. The stuff that you use to water your yard, or if you're doing some small scale agricultural, whatever, still comes out of your existing well. There's a backflow preventer that will be put in to make sure that that doesn't get into the drinking water system. So essentially, my layman's answer is that the overall usage of water in this area is going to be the same, because there's the same number of people. We'll leave aside that 10% potential for growth, because that is also part of the equation, but that's only 10%
The treatment
of drinking water.
Just the drinking water. Just the drinking water.
True, but several of those people that are using that drinking water are drinking nitrates and E. coli, so.
Why, the sewer area, I thought was where the water pump is, how come the water thing is stretched all the way down?
It was
That
not,
has a lot more people.
as you move down maybe way, the lot sizes get much larger on average. And that was one of the, I think, decisions that Boonville planners directed us, is that it didn't feel that it was a real problem to extend the sewer down that area. Plus, when you get into that less dense condition, especially for development of sewer facilities, then the unit cost on doing that
But where are we
really
sending
extends.
water down there?
There are a couple of other reasons for that. One of them is the public water system permitting that we talked about earlier. The state really wants to consolidate those. The fewer permits that they have to regulate, the better. And the fewer permits that have to be complied with in the community, the better. Because ultimately, it saves all of you some money when they don't have to have an individual operator operating each one. The other thing is the general plan and the community plan for Anderson Valley has really tried to encourage the county and vis-a-vis the community services district to provide municipal services, water and wastewater, to the two growth areas or kind of densely populated areas of Philo and Boonville. So those are some of the peripheral reasons why we're looking at doing the water system larger than the wastewater system. The final thing is, you got a school district up here, or another school up here, and to get these two schools into the system is a huge benefit to the community as well as to the children, because currently they have to run their own waste, too many different waters going on here, their own water systems.
Were they tested?
They have publicly, state-regulated public systems that they operate on their own. They would prefer not to be involved in that business. And secondarily, they consider, at least the administration and the fire department, consider the fact that there is not appropriate high-end fire protection facilities at that school to be undesirable. I think you would all like there to be a situation where if there was a fire problem at one of the schools, that it could be dealt with appropriately.
So I just wanted to briefly speak on that, okay? I was just there today at the elementary school, and this is simply looking at the fire aspect only, not looking at all these things you guys are talking about. So just bringing the fire aspect to the table. I was there today doing my annual inspection, and when I turned on their fire hydrants there, they were producing less water than an actual fire hose was needed to put out the fire. If we had a fire at the school today, we would not be able to deliver enough water to keep that school from burning down if it was in a fully engaged, fully involved state. My concern with that is we lose our school, we all know what that's going to do to the community. I, as a fire chief, am worried about critical infrastructure, as well as the clinic and the high school. Those are things that I would consider to be very vulnerable, and big risks for our community. From a fire aspect alone, they do not have enough water at the schools. I would love to see them have water from a fire team.
Is there a way to do that without?
They were built before it was required. They did put in some things voluntarily, but it's still not enough. And I would have to say, if I went to that school today and it was burning, I would have to watch out for the exposures around it and not put out the fire inside.
So then we have to pay for water.
I'm not saying
so
that.
they can have a fire hydrant there?
No, what I'm saying is, as a fire department, I identify the risks in our community, and that is a major risk. And I have to say that if I didn't say that, I wouldn't be doing my job.
But we still have to pay for the water. We have to pay for our drinking water and for everyone, for them guys to come in and use water from our wells to sell it back to us so we can have drinking water, and so that the schools can have their own water where they can have fire hydrants, so the community has to pay for all the water now.
Sure, so that's going to be for the community to decide, and I completely understand your point. I want to add another thing on top of this, is the school is a big deal, but also your insurance ratings are going to be affected. So you will have a reduction in what's called ISO ratings, which is also going to affect you guys. And any future buildings that you do down the road are going to require state code to mandate you to do more fire suppression features, such as sprinklers and things of that nature, which these alone, if you were to do it on your property, to have storage tanks, the pumps and all that, is a very onerous, expensive on the builder. So this would benefit you. Also, not for me to decide, but that's for you guys to know, fire suppression is a factor in this. And that's for the community to put together.
Are there regulations that they should fall under the school by state and county standards to have enough water?
You bet. So once a building permit happens and a reconstruction happens, so if they were to build a new gymnasium or something like that.
Not what they have now though.
No, it could be basically existing non-conforming, old building that had an old standard and you live up to the permit process.
So that if we added a water storage tank, that would meet the requirements.
So you could do it independently, absolutely.
Yeah.
And everybody could do something independently. I think that's what everyone's doing today. Is, do we want to do a community system, or do we want to do it independent?
So the state,
but they would have their own, yeah.
So the state and county doesn't come in and try to safeguard against this fire danger that you're talking about then?
The state?
The schools are county schools, right?
I don't know what the school does on their side as far as the fire code goes and what our fire capability is. That would be, we do not have enough to put out a full fire at the school. That's just a reality. We don't have the water storage and pumping to supply our fire to do the job.
something is it we do to keep those schools and clinics safe?
Actually, this is one of the steps in the right direction, whether or not we decide to go this way or not. But
in the interim, this is taking years and years.
yeah, I don't want to take away from this meeting. I would love to talk about that on the side. We're trying every way that we can to bring water and things like that. But we can't supply the hydro system, could, bear with me, in order to bring the water capacity that we're talking about. It's just a hydrant municipal system would do much better and would do a better job.
It's my understanding though, the schools and clinics have their own water bill. So what do we worry about paying for them?
Again, that's for you guys as to decide here, but when it comes down to the school, today I was at the school, I turned it on, just dribbled out.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm talking about is the billing. And don't they get their own bill anyway?
Sure, they get their
Each connection will get their own bill.
So I don't understand what we're worried about paying.
Yeah,
or
when
what
they
they
get
get.
them, they're gonna pay their own.
Yeah.
Can I add one last point here before I go to be very, very short? Remember that this is also what we would go to tap into to then fight fire in the rural communities.
Right.
It's, we need this in order to have a capacity to fill it.
I'm with you.
So.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if I could change the subject and backtrack a bit. I read this or heard it, and you just stated it. Did I understand you to say that the water that will be delivered in this system, as you envision it now, can only be used for use inside the house?
No, it was just, the suggestion was that if some people keep and retain their wells for use, that would be an outside use.
Those of us who do not have a well right now, who happen to be on a public system, don't have that option, so.
Yeah, that's a choice. What
We will be able to irrigate our yards.
Yes, but what you won't be able to do is use your existing well to feed into the water system. So that's the backbone of it. Yeah, if you don't have a well currently, you can use as much water as you want to pay for. And that's why
That is what it sounded like you said.
you're right, and I should have clarified that, so thank you.
One question. So if your parcel is big enough and you're not contaminating and your space, you produce it and everything is okay, are you obligated to be on the system?
That's a decision for the district to ultimately make for the community.
Which we vote on?
Wait. The state says that if you are in the sewer area, the sewer zone, and you must hook up because they have
But
to.
we get to vote on it.
Well, on the whole thing will go up or down.
Not individually.
But the water, drinking water, you can opt out.
Sewer you can't.
Sorry.
So Jack, to follow this up, are you putting tanks, where are you putting storage tanks in this plan?
The storage tanks would actually bring a transmission main, would run south and up on the back side of the ridge line, if you go to Hutzel. It's large property out there, private property, talk to the property owner about the potential of putting the storage tanks. On the back side of the ridge, you wouldn't even, frankly, you wouldn't even see them from the main road going through
So
town.
where's your secondary on that? In case it gets fire all around that, you can't get into it, the pumps go? What about down by the school, so you have a secondary?
No, what happens is these tanks are high enough elevation, and the lines that are going to be running down the roadways are sufficient size that the water can be delivered to those locations at a pressure that's suitable for the fire department to use them.
Any break in the middle of it, you're done, correct? You can't get,
If in fact there was a horrific main break, that would be the case. I cannot conceive.
So no secondary plan in that, at this point? No secondary plan to do something down below?
There is, in that particular location, you came down below, you probably have to run a mile or so up either hillside to get to the elevation.
You'd have storage below in case you have fires or something at different locations.
The problem with that is you cannot leave storage just sitting on a system that's stagnant, that doesn't have water moving through it, connected to the water system. What occurs here is every day, those tanks get filled up a little bit, sun comes out, that water turns over, stays fresh. The situation that you're describing is one, frankly, that's not uncommon in many, many communities. And the biggest, the reason that there might be such a upgrade, which would have to be something catastrophic, like an earthquake fault running through your valley or something like that. It's not a reasonable condition or scenario, frankly, to provide for that level of additional expense.
Since I see there's multiple sites for the wells, why not split, two different storage? So part of town gets storage tank and north side of town or east or west.
As I indicated, downriver to the north, if we were to locate a tank down there as well, I mean, it's something that we can do, we can take a look at. It's going to, it will significantly increase the cost of the system, but it's not, it is a possible alternative.
Yeah, because it will make a difference. If anything happened, then everybody's out of water, and the people on the east, on the west side, it's going to run out of water before anybody else.
Let's look at the audience.
We will. Yes, ma'am.
How do you go about acquisitioning a well from somebody? Do you buy the water from them?
There are various options. You could outright purchase an easement over top of the well, and it belongs to the district. You could enter into a lease arrangement with that property owner. You could enter into an arrangement as a base lease and potentially pays them for water pumped. There's a number of options, ways you could go about it.
Does a well have a lifespan? In other words, you put the well in, is it guaranteed to be there for 50 years?
Nope.
You do it in 20?
Well, wells don't have a specified lifespan. If they are maintained, wells can have lifespans that are easily 50, 100 years. There's nothing to preclude you from, once a well shows a decline, from constructing another one nearby.
So you purchase an easement, and then you just cancel it if the well goes dry?
No. If you purchase the easement's yours. And if you've got a problem there with that well, it's up to you to rectify that problem, deal with it however it best suits. Yes, sir.
I just have a question about is there a cap, for instance, on any particular area? Precisely, I'm interested in the Meadow district there. Is there a cap on the amount of Meadow Estates wells that will be drilled or can be drilled?
Well, we know that we don't want to construct wells too close together, or else it will not be that effective. The drawdowns will start interfering with them, and that's some of the concerns of the community.
Right. I live in that vicinity, and so do several of our friends, and that is a big concern, and that's why I'm asking that question, to sort of like...
And so what we have planned here, there was maybe a potential of 3/4 max spread across a larger area than the existing well field is located.
Everybody's worried about their well being kind of like tapped out.
And that's the issue that we will present to our hydrogeologists, to say, this is what we're planning to do. There's been questions within the community about what potential impacts this might have, how far would those impacts extend. Please provide us some guidance or thoughts on your opinion as to whether or not this is an issue or not, and if we need to modify it. So if I could move on quickly to treatment.
Yeah. So
On the treatment side, the treatment requirements will depend upon the location, essentially on the water quality, and on the well construction itself. The state mandates on a public water supply well, if you're unable to put what we call an annular seal, sealing the concrete spacing between the casing and the ground, if you're unable to provide that for a 50-foot depth, then you have what they consider to be a non-standard well, and you are required to provide a higher, or a level of treatment that might be associated almost with a surface water source, filtration process to screen out pathogens in addition to disinfection. So in much of your community, it is likely impractical to install a well that has a seal of the full 50 foot depth, because a lot of that, may say 30 to 50 feet, is maybe where the groundwater is actually most prevalent. So at those locations where we either acquire or we determine it's best to develop a well with a shallower seal than 50 feet, we'll not only be providing disinfection at those locations, but we will be providing this filtration process. And if in fact there was a mineral, we had minerals in excess of the constituent levels allowed by the state, we would be filtering those out of the water as well. That kind of system exists, for example, down at the elementary school. The water there has got high levels of iron and manganese. They have a filtration facility, they pump it through to bring those levels down to appropriate point. Here's a picture of a standard treatment building that might be associated with one of these well fields or clusters. 12 foot by 16 foot. That's large enough to house the facilities that I was just talking about. Wherever there was manganese or iron treatment, there'd be a small exterior plastic tank associated with it, where the backwash water that is used or that is washed out of the filters is temporarily stored and then recycled back through the filtration process. So there'd be a 12-foot, 5,000 gallon tank sitting beside one of these at those particular locations.
We skipped over what the wells meant.
Yeah, these, when we develop a new well, we need to secure it against entry by vandals, just kids goofing off, what have you. There's a company out there that makes these metal insulated mesh enclosures. This happens to be one that was done for the city of Cloverdale. This is on a big, what I really term a municipal supply well, 400 gallon per minute well. We're talking about discharge piping that's 4-inch or greater. The wells we're talking about in your community would never have a discharge pipe greater than 2 inches. So we're talking about something that's, 1/2 of the size of what we're seeing here. You can see by this picture the size of those facilities. We don't have generally the same types of things in there, but they're just all much miniature in size. The water storage facilities, right now, in order to provide for the state mandated storage, which is equivalent to your maximum day demand, the state wants every community to have at least 1 day's summertime usage storage up there in case there's power outages, what have you. They want at least that much storage for a community. That combined with a flyer flow that we would provide to serve the schools and your larger commercial buildings that may develop here in town, consisting of 1,000 gallon minute flow for 3 hours, would result in nearly 300,000 gallons of storage for the community, about 140 to 150,000 gallon tanks. These are tanks that are located that we designed and were built in Lake County at Anderson Springs, just outside of, outside of Middletown. Those happen to be they're like 10,000 gallons greater than what we need, which means they're almost identical in the size to what we would be looking at here. As I indicated again, they'd be, at least at one site would allow them to be on the backside of the ridge. At that location, we'd probably make them dark green so they fit into the dark green of the oaks that are behind them up on that ridge line. And there's a particular color that's used quite often for that purpose.
Would this be treated water or just non-treated water?
It is treated water.
And do you have a chemicals list of possible chemicals you'll be using if you have to treat it?
The state requires that you provide a minimum chlorine level in the water.
But there are other chemicals that are used in.
There sometimes can be chemicals used to remove iron and manganese, but it can also often be accomplished just with chlorine. And then filtration through a media that absorbs the minerals.
Okay, so that's not unhealthy to have chlorine in the water like that? Would it be more healthy to drink well water than it would be to have treated water?
Regardless of whether it's well water or not, in a public water system, the state suggests that you have a minimum level of chlorine in your water. Some systems can attempt to operate it without it. If you ever have one positive test then within your water system, you're done. You get to flush out your little water system, you get to install the chlorine facilities, and move on from there. So it's sort of an unrealistic expectation in a system of this size.
You're only talking right now about the emergency water system.
No, it's all chlorinated water.
No,
Okay.
that's all.
Okay.
The water is combined.
Okay.
Domestic and fire water is all in the same tanks, all in the same pipelines. Those pipelines serve both.
But isn't that,
buildings.
were you not talking about the emergency tanks? Is that correct or not?
Those are what we just call them water storage tanks.
Yeah.
It's holding both
But it's
your
not,
domestic storage and
it's not
fire.
being used daily, is it?
Yes, it
Oh, it
is.
is, okay.
Yes, water, those tanks, the level
Up and
will
down,
rise and fall.
fresh,
You've got
yeah,
water
fresh.
refreshing in and out of there. That's correct.
So would that be one feed to both tanks, one drain off of both tanks? And you're just using that 300,000 gallon storage?
That's correct. The state requires that you have separate entrances and exits out of those tanks. They even require that you show that there's adequate mixing, and sometimes mixing facilities are installed in the tanks to ensure that that water stays fresh, turns over, and doesn't get stagnant.
Well, my question is, to clarify, you have one main coming down from both tanks.
Correct. A single main from each tank that connects at the tank site, and only a single main runs out Puzzle Road into town. That's correct.
Can you speak to what happens when the power goes out?
The water keeps running, nothing happens. The only thing that happens is that in the area of town where power was serving the wells wouldn't operate. However, under most circumstances, those well sites would be equipped. A number of the well sites and treatment facilities would be equipped either with standby generators or at the very minimum equipped with facilities to accept portable generators that could be brought in. Typically, generally, I should say, the power outages are during the winter time, water usage is generally down, and we're providing a max day storage that relates to summer usage. So you're usually sitting on 3, 4, 5 days worth of storage before you even start to get into your fire protection water. It takes that kind of level of outage to really start to cause you to think about having to crank up generators and starting to produce water.
So I'd love you to finish, and I'd love to hear from Jesse one more time, because a question about how can we use our parcels if we don't have to supply our own well and our own septic?
Well,
If we develop our parcels differently.
this is, I've essentially covered all of the components here, so I'd be more than happy to transfer.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you. And just to warn you, I get to talk at you too, so I'll keep it short. I just want to give you an overview of what's going to happen next.
Okay. And I'll also keep it very short. I just want to touch on your question in particular. The aspects of a water or wastewater system do allow you to actually utilize a smaller parcel size if you are looking to subdivide your parcel. And ultimately, for some of the commercial properties, that actually may allow for some commercial uses to go in there. One thing I do want to note is that, throughout Mendocino County, we have municipal advisory councils, and they're throughout unincorporated communities such as Laytonville, also in, Redwood Valley as well. Hopland, I think, presents a good parallel for you to look at in terms of securing your community character and your sense of place. You might want to talk with your incoming supervisor with regards to forming a municipal advisory council. It can build on a lot of the activities that you have here. I'm always really encouraged to see a room full of people, especially, in this situation in which you're talking about the future of your community. So a municipal advisory council would be a formal way to advise the county with regard to decisions about subdivisions, about rezonings, and about large-scale use permit projects. And additionally, advising us with regards to how to provide feedback through the CEQA process as you move forward through this water treatment facility.
Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce you to Ted Williams. There he is. Come on up, Ted. He has another idea. And so we'd like to have Ted Williams as going to be our new supervisor.
I can phrase it as a question.
Then you will answer?
The these guys will answer. Have you looked at the feasibility when you have the trench open, the permits in place to drop conduit for fiber so that we could bring the first community in the county up to modern broadband standards? Most of the expense in broadband deployment is that trenching. And it seems like this is a great opportunity to do both at once. Which one of you wants to begin?
Well, no, it has not been discussed or thought about at all, because we are unaware that that was something that was happening or being thought about in the community. There are, frankly, some logistical issues associated with that, from the standpoint of accessing your underlying, be it sewer or water lines, through a trench that contains other utilities. It's not to say that there might not be an opportunity if the district was involved in this process of putting something just off to the side where you're just doing a little bit more trenching, something like that. But no, frankly, it has not come up, so it's not something that we've given a lot of thought.
Could it be that? Could you look at it?
Isn't it possible for the water system to be, is it possible for the water system to be involved in the wastewater system? Is it possible for, I guess what I'm saying is...
Can they share some trench? Now, unfortunately, the answer...
No, I wasn't saying that. I was basically saying is... they're going to be getting 8,000 gallons out a month as a wastewater. Is that what I'm understanding? That there's 3 trucks that go through?
No, the reference to trucking had to do with sludge removal from the treatment process.
So I guess I got a question, because this all came from the health issue, right, the Ebola. So my question is, if we put in this water system, do we really need to put in a sewer system too? Because why don't we just use the existing septic and have potable water rushing in the houses?
Yes. That's a reasonable point to discuss within the community.
Then we don't get fire suppression.
That's
you get water.
Yeah, water.
But you don't have the septic, you have to go with the sewer line.
Right.
Do you want to speak to that, Trace?
Well, that's certainly your guys' choice. But I did want to clarify, I think, a misperception. A failing septic system, we generally know it's failing because the effluent is surfacing upwards at the ground, because the leach trench is clogged, so you don't have material infiltrating down to the ground any longer. Now it's coming up to the surface, so it's not as easy to say no. It's the failed septic systems that's causing the problem. A modern septic system is designed to minimize any potential to impact groundwater. There's a lot of systems, old systems in the ground that predate the regulations. We still come across pit privies and outhouses. So, it's not as simple as it seems, and what's happening under the ground, we can't really see, we can't know for sure. If groundwater is being impacted, it can be extremely difficult to determine what the source or cause of that is. And one other thing I want to mention, a project like this,
is going to have a huge permit from the Regional Water Board that's going to have oversight. The operator is going to spend a good portion of their time just fulfilling permit compliance requirements because the Water Board takes it extremely seriously to be protective of groundwater. Because once it's contaminated, it can be sometimes impossible to mitigate.
You want to wrap up, Justin?
I'll get one more question.
I have a question, moving out of order, but I have to go, so I'm gonna ask it. How long is construction going to take on this project? If it's approved, do we move forward?
Well, that's a long answer. To give you just a general construction window, each project, so just the water project or the wastewater project, each of those will probably take about 2 years in total. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be 2 years in one spot. So the pipeline, for example, for either project is probably going 100, 150 feet a day where they'd be trenching. So you'd probably be having a week or so where each kind of block would be impacted by it until that moves through. They would not be constructed at the same time because that would entirely shut down downtown. So one system or the other would be constructed at a time. The larger facilities like the water tanks would probably take, what, 6 months maybe? For the grading and tank erection and grading. The well systems would probably be much shorter as far as real construction going on. For the well drilling, it's fairly quick. And they have to develop the well, and they have to build the treatment building, which doesn't take long. I think the longest part about all that is plumbing it together and then doing the testing that their state requires. The largest kind of discrete construction thing would be actually building the effluent holding pump. That's probably...
Well, in conjunction with the treatment system and disposal area, it'd be a year contract minimum, by 18 months.
And then the spray field is probably the easiest thing because you just put subsurface, above ground piping with sprinkler heads. So it'll take a while.
But how long is Boonville gonna be torn up, I guess, is what we want?
Like the main street?
Like the main street, how long will we all be torn up from businesses or houses?
Well, as Justin indicated, the pipeline construction is a linear moving project. So it would move about 100 feet a day. So in any one business would only be impacted for a week. You know,
They have to
that
have a
includes
hookup to it, though.
pavement cutting to restoration.
You have to have a hookup to come into that line, right? From their business to their home.
Right, then there'd be the laterals from the main to the businesses would be constructed.
Right, so that's the other construction going on.
So can we finish up with the process so you guys know what to expect? So what we've been doing as part of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, we're preparing an environmental impact report, which is truncated to an EIR. It has two main purposes. One is for environmental review of the project, and the other is public disclosure, so that you know what the Community Services District is attempting to do and what impacts it might have to the environment.
Could you use the microphone?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is the notice of preparation period,
which extends to November 10th, which it closes at that point, so you can provide written comments, you can provide phone comments.
Is it possible to extend that period?
Let me keep going, because you get more opportunities to comment. This is not the only one. Based on the input that we get from you guys here and through the 10th, we'll take that information as well as the engineering efforts these two guys have made and look at the project as a whole for environmental impacts. And that kind of scopes the document.
There's one of the things on the treatment plant list, there are artifacts. As the Native Americans, have they been notified that a treatment plant might be built on their old village?
Yeah, part of the CEQA process is AB 52, which requires the lead agency, which is the Community Services District, to provide them with the same kind of 30-day period notice as you to enter into what they call government consultation.
When will that be?
It's going on currently.
Great, great.
Yeah.
No, Mr. Representative.
So we then prepare the draft environmental impact report, and that will probably be done about mid-January. And we'll issue at that point what's called a notice of availability. Anybody that got a notice of preparation will get that same thing in the mail. If you did not get it and you'd like to, make sure that your name is on the sign-in sheet and add to the mailing list, please, so that we can get you on the list. And that starts a 45-day public review period of that environmental document. So you get to review what all the sub-consultants, the biologists, the archaeologists, the hydrogeologists say about what specific fields might be impacted by the project. As part of that 45-day process, we'll also notify you of another meeting just like this, so we can talk about that document. So you'll have more information, and we'll have more information, so we can kind of better answer some of the questions that didn't get answered here tonight. Once that 45-day period ends, then we take all of the comments and then we respond to them again. And those go into what's called a final EIR. So the draft EIR sometimes gets revised, and those revisions also go into the final EIR. Once that document is prepared, it would then go to the Community Services District for action, and they would have to certify the EIR at a publicly notified standard board meeting. So there's another opportunity to comment there. If they find, or if we find and recommend to them that there are some significant unavoidable impacts that we can't mitigate somehow, then they'd have to prepare a statement of overriding conditions with their starting considerations, which essentially says, yes, we've acknowledged that there is a significant impact. However, the overall benefit to the community and to public health is such that we're going to go ahead and approve the project anyway. That particular meeting is the first time that the district will actually approve any action on this beyond what they've done to acquire the grants. So, like I say, we're still in the planning process. No decisions have been made finally, and no decisions will be made until we have that final meeting to certify this document. And that will probably be May-ish, approximately. And you'll get notified for that meeting. However, you typically get notified by any of the Community Services District's standard board meetings. Once they've certified it, assuming they certify it, they may not, we would then file what's called a notice of determination. And that gets filed with the county, and it gets filed with the state clearinghouse, and it essentially tells everybody, potential funders, we've done our CEQA work, and it's available for you for whatever purpose you want to use it. And typically they're used for securing grant funding. So as I said, we've got some sub-consultants doing special studies. We've got biological resources. We've got some aesthetics. We've got cultural resources. We've got soils, hazardous materials, water quality, water availability, growth, and costs. All kinds of things we've talked about. They're up on the board. You've given us questions, and we're looking at them. And those answers to those questions will be in the EIR.
And we've recorded the meeting, so you're going to listen to the questions.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Over and over again.
Just, these reports, will they be available on a webpage?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so when the hydrologist does his report, and all the other reports will be available on the webpage.
Yes, with one exception. With one exception.
Again,
I don't want to do that, I didn't.
Cultural resources reports are considered confidential, so that will not be on the website.
But I don't, just what the water table stuff, you guys have, you could post.
It'll be in what's called a technical appendix to the EIR, so it'll be a big,
on the webpage.
large PDF. So if you ever get fiber optics, maybe you can download it.
Is that based on current well production or the production of the wells when they were first drilled?
Which, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the
Water levels, the production of the wells.
I think it's based on both.
The hydrogeologist will be looking at the current, what he'll be estimating the current capacity of your aquifer, and whether or not they perceive that there are going to be impacts as a result of the community system.
And it's important to note too that all of those studies are available in
conjunction with the environmental impact report. And as I mentioned earlier, a similar process occurs when anyone wants to do a minor subdivision, a use permit, or a rezone. So any information for developing a parcel or rezoning it, similar levels of information with regards to aesthetics, tribal and cultural resources, all of those similar reports will also be made available. And that's why I was saying the discretionary process is really one that invites the conversation and puts the brakes on fast development.
Are the parcels in Boonville, are they able to subdivide those small parcels?
No, but part of the reality of having a water system would allow for smaller subdivisions that are currently allowed on certain parcels. And again, that would all go through the rezone or subdivision process. So it all depends on the underlying characteristics of the land right now and how it's zoned.
I can't believe that these small parcels can handle more than they already have.
Some of them, how they're zoned right now, may not be able to subdivide even further. It all depends on the initial
The
zone.
use is already being, there's already buildings in place, so they.
Right, so that existing underlying characteristics would play a role.
Which is the majority.
You bring up the point, so alternates have to go through county planning department, look at all those aspects, right?
Yes, correct. So if you were to do a major project after the water system or the wastewater system is put in place, those discretionary reviews are still going to be undertaken by the county, and in a similar process to what Justin is describing here right now for this week, the water system.
Yeah, so anything that wants to use that 10%, it's not a slam dunk. They don't just get to have it. So to summarize, next steps, produce the draft EIR. We'll get that out probably mid-January. That's our intent, and we should meet that goal. So we'll issue that notice of availability so you all know when it hits the streets. Public comment session is a meeting just like this one, hopefully with a bigger projector. And we'll also take additional comments on the EIR at that time. That should be mid to late February.
Does the EIR cover both the water treatment
Yes, it
center
does.
and, or is that separate?
It'll be fine.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, originally, we did this again, we did this earlier last October for just the wastewater project, and the state has since asked us to combine the two to make it easier for you guys to keep it straight, so it's just one process instead of two going on at the same time.
I just want to clarify in case it wasn't clear, you will not receive a letter in the mail about the Community Services District meeting where we will adopt it, but it's the third Wednesday of every month at 5:30 at the firehouse. abcsd.org. We do have to post our agendas and we post them at the post offices, but I did want you to think that you're actually going to get a letter about that piece.
When are we gonna get the vote on this?
When you get your rate letter.
Yeah, as Mel says, when we get the rate letter. We won't know that until we complete this process and get some state input on what funding is available
Maybe the end.
towards the end of 2019.
And is it true that if we don't send those letters in, it's considered a yes vote? Is that true, Melanie?
I'm sorry?
If you do nothing, it's a yes vote.
No, that's not democracy, you can't do that.
It's Proposition 218.
Okay, well, how many of you live in the affected area on the board? How many board members live in the affected area? One.
Maybe two.
One, two. You're not representing the common.
Board members don't vote on it. It's the people that own the property and the parcels. They are the ones that will decide. Nobody
Right.
outside of
Let's get it
the
to a
area
vote.
votes on it, only the people that live in the area vote on it.
Right, and we're gonna vote on it. They voted right now. Let's do it now.
All right, we are done. Thank you so much. I just want you to know, if you really want to see this again, it will be on YouTube. We have Sierra, just a minute. Sierra, we have Sierra Peters, then we have Erica, way in the corner, Valencia.